Felix had always dreamed of leaving Johannesburg to seek greener pastures abroad. The city was full of opportunities, but it was also a place where dreams could fade as quickly as they were born. He was the only son of Mama Rossi, a 52-year-old woman who had lost her husband 5 years ago. She worked as a seamstress in the bustling taxi ranks, patching up old clothes to make ends meet. Though life had been tough, she had high hopes for her son and always encouraged him to pursue his dreams. Felix, however, saw no future in Johannesburg. Unemployment was high, and crime was everywhere. He had watched friends get caught up in drugs, gangsterism, and scams that promised quick money but led nowhere. He wanted more, but without money for a flight and proper documents, Felix and his friends had no choice but to attempt the dangerous route, crossing borders illegally. One evening, as the golden sunset bathed the city in a warm glow, Felix sat alone on a bench near the bustling streets of Johannesburg. People walked past him, caught up in their own lives. Street vendors selling their last goods of the day, taxis honking impatiently, and office workers hurrying home. But Felix's mind was elsewhere. He imagined himself in a foreign land, walking the clean streets of New York or London, far from the struggles of home. He had heard stories of people who had made it, people who sent back money and built houses for their families. That was the dream. His friend Fred approached him, breaking his thoughts. "Are you sure about this, Felix? This journey is not a joke," Fred warned. Felix sighed. "I can't stay here, man. There's nothing for me in this city. I have to take the risk." Their journey began in the depths of the city, where they met a man known as Big Sam, a smuggler who promised to get them across the borders into Namibia, then through Botswana, and up toward Europe. They knew the risks: corrupt border officers, violent smugglers, and the possibility of being abandoned in the middle of nowhere. But they had no choice. From the moment they left Johannesburg, the nightmare began. They were packed into the back of a rusted minibus, crammed so tightly that breathing became a struggle. The driver, a reckless man with bloodshot eyes, sped through the city streets, dodging police checkpoints and bribing officers along the way. The minibus took them deep into the Free State province, where they switched vehicles under the cover of darkness. By the time they reached the Namibian border, exhaustion had set in. They had to trek for hours through rocky terrain, avoiding patrol officers and security cameras. The desert air was dry, making every breath feel like swallowing sand. Their guide, a ruthless man with a scar across his face, warned them not to fall behind. At night, the true terror of the journey revealed itself. They slept in abandoned shacks, surrounded by the distant howls of wild animals. Some nights they heard gunshots, either border officers taking down smugglers or rival gangs fighting for control. Fear gripped them, but they had no choice but to move forward. As they crossed into Botswana, the heat became unbearable. Their water supply was low, and some of the travelers began collapsing from dehydration. Felix pushed on, his feet blistered from walking on scorching sand. The dream of a better life started to fade as survival became the only goal. Then came the most dangerous part, the final border crossing. They had reached a small town where corrupt officials looked the other way for the right price. But there was one rule: no illegal substances. Felix made one fatal mistake. He had been warned to drop anything illegal, but he didn't listen. He still had a wrap of weed in his pocket, something he had planned to smoke to give him energy. Unfortunately for Felix, the punishment for disobedience was death. He was shot and thrown overboard into the sea. His friend Fred, who had traveled with him, was filled with tears. Years went by and Fred returned to their village. He told everyone the story of what had happened to Felix, but he warned them not to tell Mama Rossi. She had always been proud of her son, and Fred didn't want to break her heart. But as time passed, Mama Rossi began to wonder why she hadn't heard from her son. She had always been hopeful that he would return, but as the years went by, she started to lose hope. Despite her growing doubts, she never gave up. She would often talk to her friends and family about Felix, telling them stories about his childhood and his dreams of traveling abroad. She asked the village elders to announce his disappearance, hoping someone might have news. Even as she grew older and her health began to decline, she never lost faith that Felix would return. She would often ask her friends and family to help her locate him, and when her death approached, she called them to her side with one final request. "Tell Felix where all my lands are in case he comes back after I am gone," she said, her voice weak but determined. "The land behind the house is his. The plot of land by the river, that's his too. Make sure he knows that I left everything for him." Her family and friends were deeply moved by her words, and they promised to carry out her wishes. Even in death, her love for her son never faltered. Years later, when Mama Rossi passed away at the age of 69, the villagers remembered her as a woman who never gave up hope, even in the face of adversity. They whispered stories about Felix, the son who had gone abroad and never returned, and they wondered if he had found the life he had sought. But Mama Rossi's legacy lived on, and her plot of lands remained a testament to her enduring love. Even though Felix never returned, his mother's hope and love for him never died, continuing to inspire generations to come.